Secretly recorded from deep inside the bowels of a decommissioned missile silo, we bring you the man, one single man who wants to bring light to the darkness and dark to the lightness. Although he's not always right, he is always certain. So now, with security protocols in place, the protesters have been forced back behind the barricades and the blast doors are now sealed. Without further delay, let me introduce you to the host of Hutcast, Mr. Tim Hutner.
Thank you, Sergeant at Arms. You can now take your post.
Happy Sunday. Hutcast live, well, sort of live in our studio today. We've got Jeff Garland with Krav Maga. Krav Maga is a IDF, and I believe it is, well, I'm going to get a whole lot of education here today. So maybe I even have the IDF wrong, but Jeff is here in studio to give us his dojo approach to what this is. So Hutcast will be right back. Stand by for Krav Maga and Jeff Garland. Buying a gun is no ordinary purchase. Whether you're a hunter, competitive shooter, or self-defense is your priority, there are many kinds of guns and many kinds of training programs. You use your brain all the time. You will rarely need to use your gun. Before you find yourself in a situation where you need to make a critical decision, make sure your training is the best you can get. It could be the difference between life and death, or freedom or detention. For the best quality training, check out permittocarry.us. If you live in Minnesota or Wisconsin or even Florida, give Gene German a call, 612-388-2403. That's Permit to Carry US. Or call Gene German at 612-388-2403. As I mentioned in pre-roll, Jeff Garland is here in studio, and we're going to have a conversation about Krav Maga. I don't know much about it other than he's the professional. He's here to teach us. He's here to teach you. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim.
Jeff, we've known each other for a number of years now, and I've always had this interest in this. Of course, we're a self-defense type of show. We're a 2A show where we have all kinds of things that we protect one another in. Tell us about, let's start with you. What you are.
Well, I'm a retired police officer. I was a police officer for 31 years. And during that time, I taught a lot of self-defense because I wanted to make sure that officers were able to protect themselves. And as we all know, you have to be able to protect yourself hand to hand as well as what's on your belt. So I got involved in that, have been teaching self-defense, martial arts for probably over 30 years, especially with everything going on today. It's just very important for people to be able to defend themselves and not just rely on like a weapon or a gun.
I see. So in this Krav Maga, how does one get involved with this? How did you get involved?
Well, originally I had read an article in a magazine about Krav Maga, probably in the mid-90s, but there wasn't Krav Maga in Minnesota at the time. But I thought it was very interesting because it was about combat, it was a self-defense, it wasn't a martial art. And I thought it was very applicable for law enforcement, and I always wanted to try it. In about 1999, a person that I knew had reached out to me and said they were going to have a Krav Maga seminar out at the airport here in the cities. So I went out and took the seminar, and I pretty much got hooked with it, and I've just been pretty much doing that ever since.
I see. With this Krav Maga, do you see it as an alternative to in the police world? Do you see it as an alternative to a taser or heaven forbid a Kim Potter situation?
Well, it's a supplement to that. You have to be able to have things on your belt because sometimes in situations can get fluid, and sometimes you just can't control people with the hands, or you may not want to get that close to them. So obviously then you may have to go to a baton, taser. When I was in Maple Grove, I was an instructor with the police nunchucks, which did a lot of control. So if you got closer, you were able to control people and was very effective. But there had to be something in there with hand-to-hand that if it got very combative in nature, to be able to use your hands to be able to control someone quickly and without going overboard and without going to the point where you were being accused of abuse.
So you didn't want to hit into that use of force situation.
You want to make sure when you use force, you want to do it to a point where if you make the decision, I'm going to do it, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do it quickly, I'm going to be effective because it's going to make it safer for me. It's going to make it for the safer that to the person I'm using it on. And again, it's going to limit the amount of complaints you'll have for brutality.
Ah, I see. Now, what was, when you started this, what was it like back then? What was the climate of the people? Did you have everybody and their brother wanting to hate on police and wanting to, end police lives? Because I don't know. I mean, today's world's so screwed up. What was it like then when you started this in the 90s?
At that time, there were a lot of people that were concerned about how heavy-handed the police were. When I started law enforcement in 1983, there was a lot of people that were concerned. You had Rodney King in the 1991. And prior to that, you had a lot of people said, well, why can't the police officers use a type of force that doesn't hurt people? But you didn't see the hate that you see nowadays.
Right.
So a lot of people had the attitude, as long as you're not over abusive, especially with your power, if someone did something, somebody shot at you, came at with your knife, somebody was trying to kick you in the head, kick you in the ribs, and if you got the best of them and you were able to take them to jail, but that person may have gotten hurt a little bit, a lot of people felt, it's kind of something you had coming because you kind of started that. So if you get hurt, I guess it comes with the territory. They live by the sword, you die by the sword type of thing. But nowadays, if you use force, everybody wants you thrown in prison. They want you thrown in jail. They want you fired. So it's a much more difficult time for police officers to use force now.
Yes, and we've all seen that in the news. And, you guys had one crap sandwich of a job to deal with that. And I'm sorry that you have to, but, the 3%, 5% of the people that do that aren't the rest of the 96%,
Well, and that's a lot of police officers, they have to keep telling themselves that every day, that, a lot of the activism and a lot of the people that are showing the disgust and the hate toward the cops, they need to understand that before George Floyd, Minnesota cops had like a 96% approval rating throughout Minnesota. So by and large, most people approved of the job police were doing. And I still believe most people feel that way. Unfortunately, they just don't hear that.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch gears. Take us back to the origination of Krav Maga.
Well, the gentleman that started Krav Maga, his name is Amy Lichtenfeld, and he was born in 1910. And if anybody ever wants to Google him to see his incredible story, I recommend that, because I can't do it justice.
I did read some of that.
Oh, yeah. He's just an amazing individual. But in the late 1930s, he had kind of went back to like Czechoslovakia and noticed there was a lot of anti-Semitic situations going on. You had the Nazis were heavily involved in that area, occupying that area. And what he did was he gathered a lot of the Jewish boxers and wrestlers together to be able to defend themselves against a lot of the anti-Semitic situations that were going on. He wound up fleeing Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia about 1942. And then about 1944, he got involved with, I believe it's pronounced the Haganah and the Palmach, which later became the IDF. He wound up serving with the Free Czechoslovakian Legion in North Africa in 1942.
Define IDF for people.
It's the Israeli Defense Forces.
Ah, okay.
So in 1948, he helped form the IDF, and he served 16 years with that. And that's where Krav Maga really got its start, was on the battlefields. And so when people will ask, well, how do I know what you teach really works? Well, it has to be realistic. And this developed on the battlefields, and so they continued to improve it, but they knew one thing, that if it works on a battlefield, it's going to be something that's going to be able to save your life. In 1964, Emi had left and basically served his time. So he decided to modify Krav Maga for the civilians because of all the situations that were going around with Israel, all the problems, a lot of the neighbors, and he wanted to be able to make sure civilians could protect themselves. And then in 1978, Emi founded the Krav Maga Association because he wanted to spread Krav Maga around Israel. And then in 1995, he founded what's called the International Krav Maga Federation. And one of his top students at the time was a gentleman named Avi Moyal. And in 1998, unfortunately, Emi passed away. But Avi Moyal now is the chairman and the head instructor of the IKMF. And I'm a part of the Krav Maga, which is the IKMF.
IKMF stands for?
International Krav Maga Federation.
So IDF is different than IKF.
Actually, IKMF is...
Oh, AMF, okay.
Yep. It's the same, but now there are other parts of Krav Maga. There was a group of individuals that broke off from the IKMF and started like worldwide Krav Maga. So there are certainly other branches out there of Krav Maga that you can take, but the Minneapolis Krav Maga is associated with the IKMF.
I see. Is that the history in a nutshell there for the whole 1910 to current?
By and large, yes. Like, as you can see, I'm not going to be able to do it justice with a little bit I'm showing, but it gives people a kind of an idea of where it came from, and it gives people an idea that this has been around a long time, and it's proven on numerous battlefields. It's proven in civilian life. So it is something that can save your life.
Could someone by chance who's a big 2A supporter, carrier, the whole deal, have a backup plan with the Krav Maga?
Absolutely.
So we had Gene German on the show here a while back, and he did a 6-part miniseries, and it was a great show. I learned a lot. A lot of my listeners are getting in on it. What if these people took your Krav Maga class? You got to be that much closer. I get it. I mean, it's a hand-to-hand combat versus a pistol, or save them the effort of having to go through court for an unjustifiable homicide or even a justifiable homicide. What's your thought on that?
Well, Krav Maga, again, for people to understand, it's not a martial art. It's not. You're not going to go to tournaments. You're not going to be taught specific movements to go and to compete. Mm-hmm. You're going to be taught movements anywhere from people grabbing your wrist, grabbing your hair, putting you in a bear hug, taking you down to the ground and trying to choke you out. So this is based on somebody really wants to hurt you and somebody really wants to mess you up really bad. And this is a way for them to be able to protect themselves in a situation like that where you might not have access to a knife, you might not have access to your mace, you might not have access to a gun.
Mm. So it's primarily defensive moves.
Very much defensive moves.
Gives you time, buys you that second or two so that you can get away or deploy your weapon.
Absolutely. And there are times where one of the things we do teach is if somebody puts a gun in your face, which is very scary, we have moves that we show where you can actually push the gun out of the way. You can use some of your moves to try to disarm the person. And then you can either take the gun and run. That's one of the things that we really advocate is if you can, run and try to get out of there.
Mm-hmm.
But if all of a sudden the person attacks you, if you know what you're doing with the gun, if you need to do the tap and rack and you wind up having to shoot the person, I mean, that option is there, but at least we give you some movements that you can use. So if the gun's in your face, you feel confident at some point you can do something without just being a victim.
Right. And this show's pretty on that don't be a victim thing.
Correct.
Okay. Let's shift into second. How does one get involved as a end user consumer? I want to be part of this. Where do we go?
Well, there's a couple of different places that you can go. There is, I believe it's a friend of mine does Ronin 13. I think they're up in Ham Lake. You have Krav Maga in Minneapolis. You have Valley Self-Defense in Stillwater. You have Krav Maga 101, which is in Edina. And I know there's another friend of mine that does integrative defense strategies, which is Krav Maga. It's a little bit of a break-off from the IKMF, but these are all really excellent places to go if you want to learn Krav Maga.
What is the strategy? When you come in and you walk through, I'm a new guy, you walk through your guy's door, and what's the first thing you're going to say? Are you going to be this guy who's going to be a ripped six-pack, you can lift 900 pounds, or is it just some guy who is a slob and wants to make sure he doesn't get his butt kicked?
We have all kinds of people come in. We have people that are in shape, people are not. We have people that are, 15 years old, because we have kid courses. We have 2, 3, well, maybe not 2, but probably like 3, 4, 5-year-old kids.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like 5 to maybe 12 years old, I think, as the kids. And then when you start getting into teenagers, you can do adult classes. So we've had people in their 70s that come in and do it. So you can be in any kind of shape. You can be any kind of age you want. We will work with you. We will make you better.
Wow. Now, say, for instance, let's go back to the kid thing here. 15-year-old kid goes to school, uses his Krav Maga in school. Because it's not a reach out and attack, it's more of a defense mechanism. The school board or the school teachers or the on-site cop can't say, well, you started this. And is that a thing?
Well, what we teach, and one of the things that we do talk to, especially if it were to teenagers, kids in the school, is we tell them, we have to be careful with school policies because they do not allow violence. We tell them that there might be times that you might have to use self-defense. And for some of the kids' courses, the movements that they do might be a little different than the adults. Adults might be a little more of a harder style, where the kid might be more of a push away, maybe peel the hand off of them. So it's a little more softer, so they can feel comfortable using it, feel comfortable that it'll be effective, but maybe not quite have that hardness to it that you might have with an adult. I
see. So therefore, it's not an aggression, it's a protection.
It's completely protection, completely self-defense.
So then the school boards, teachers, of course, we hear the fact that no violence, but that doesn't stop the people who are violating you.
Well, what doesn't, and that's one of the things that when I was a police officer, I would talk to some of the schools about what they teach the kids, and we don't want them getting involved in fights. We don't really want them being cautious about protecting themselves. There's always somebody you can call to come, or you can run to the teacher. And it's like, I totally understand that. And I probably would say the same thing if I was in their position. Mm-hmm. But at some of these schools, they're getting so violent now,
right,
that some of these kids don't have time to get to a teacher. They don't have time to get on a phone and call 911 or whatever they want them to do. Now you've got 5, 6, 7 kids that are kicking them on the ground. Well, you got to be able to protect yourself. And one of the things that we do show is how to protect yourself on the ground as well.
Wow. It's too bad it wasn't like that back in the day when we didn't have today's crap, huh?
Well, back in those days, Tim, you remember that if a bully came up and did something to you, and if you said, look, I don't want a problem, just leave me alone, and you were forced to defend yourself because there was nothing that you do, you couldn't run away, you couldn't get away because of the other buddies with him, you might have to duke it out. Now, if you lost, you lost. If you won, he left you alone. In this day and age, if you do something like that, unfortunately, you could get suspended or expelled from a school. But we still try to teach, we teach the adults as well as the students. It's like, if you can run away and if you can de-escalate that situation, obviously that's the best. But for crying out loud, if you're backed in a corner and these kids are coming at you, and it's clear that you're going to get hurt quite seriously if you don't do something, we try to give them something to do, even if it's a softer method, so they can feel like they can protect themselves.
Wow. It is a shame today, isn't it?
It is.
We are 18 minutes and 38 seconds into this first segment. Jeff, I'm going to cut it here, and I say when we come back, what do you think we talk about adults in the class, the mindset? Do you teach the mental, okay, here's what we're going to do, the psyche of it? That sound like a plan to you?
Sounds like a plan to me.
Okay, Hutcast, we are 1856 into it. Stand by. We're going to take a commercial break, and we will be right back.
We hear a lot about air quality these days. So keeping your indoor equipment running clean and efficiently is important to your health. The experts at Dependable Heating and Cooling in Coon Rapids have been servicing the Twin City areas for more than 25 years. With the latest and most efficient technology available, they will repair or replace your equipment and keep your indoor air healthy and comfortable. Call 763-757-5040. Our team of experts is standing by, waiting to help you with all your indoor needs. Mention you've heard about this by listening to the Hutcast podcast, and you will receive a $50 off any repair. That's Dependable Heating and Cooling. 763-757-5040. Dependable Heating and Cooling. Welcome back, Hutcast. In studio today on 3/6/2022, Jeff Garland, Krav Maga, and at the last segment we left at where we're going to ask Jeff to explain the psyche, the mindset of this whole when you go to sign up. Jeff, you got the speaker. Go ahead and make it happen.
Well, the one thing when we bring people in is the first thing we let them know that they have to have a survivor mindset. We have a lot of people coming in that don't have a lot of experience with self-defense. Maybe they haven't been involved in a lot of fights. We have parents might come in and say, I'm sending my son or my daughter to college. I'm worried if something happens to them. I want them to be able to protect themselves. But one of the things we tell them is you can have all the physical skills, but if you don't have the survivor mindset inside you, then you're going to defeat yourself. And so we get rid of that defeatist attitude in them.
Is that difficult for most people?
For some people it is, especially people that maybe weren't very competitive through their life. And so one of the things we let them know is, what you're learning is something that can save you. But we also tell them, give yourself some time to learn it. Some people will come in and will be a higher level within a year, and some people that might take 2 or 3 years. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody learns at their own pace. And then people feel a lot more confident. They feel much more comfortable. And when they make mistakes, they understand that that's just part of the learning process.
Now, I know that when I had my karate classes, you dressed up in a gi, you suited up. Does that happen here?
No, we don't wear a gi. Everybody has kind of their own T-shirts that they sell. And it's just sweats. People can come in sweats if they want. We want them to be comfortable. We might have some classes once in a while where we'll say, okay, we're going to go outside. It's 10 below. You're going to put on your winter gear and we're going to go outside and we're going to perform the exact same thing. But now you got to realize that you can do it when it's 85 above or when it's 15 below in Minnesota. So we try to adapt to different conditions.
Mm-hmm. Do gloves hamper the effectiveness?
In a situation like this, a little bit it will. It feels a little different. But again, depending on the season, if you have ski gloves on, the moves that we do, you can still perform because a lot of them is gross motor movements. It's punches, it's palm heel strikes, it's elbows, it's knees, it's kicks. So even if you have a lot of that, a snowmobile suit on, for example, even if you had something like that, you could still perform this.
How do you address the carjacking in your face? Guy's next to you. He's already ripped your door open because, of course, you put it in park and your door's unlocked. How do you address that?
Well, we're like everybody else. We tell them, it's not worth getting killed for a vehicle. And I know a lot of people find that kind of hard to believe, or some people may not believe in that. But we tell them, by and large, it's kind of like our timeline. If you can de-escalate, if you can run away, if you get away from it, we advocate that. But we also have seminars that we do that are in that exact situation. Someone comes up and pulls open your door, or they get into your passenger door and stick a gun in your face. What can you do to protect yourself, to push them out of the car, to be safe overall? And we have a lot of seminars that covers that. So we give them different stressors, from just a basic somebody grabs your wrist to suddenly you got a gun behind your head. How can you get out of that?
I would think, I agree with the car thing. It is just a car. But when you have kids in the back seat, when they're strapped in and someone's taking your car, really, it's a fight for life right there.
It is. And a lot of people say, well, if someone has a gun to me in a car. My kids are in there. I don't want that gun going off and hitting my kids, which I completely understand. And that's one of the things in Krav Maga is we show you different angles, different ways to defend yourself, whether it's a gun, whether it's a knife. And having all those tools in mind, that's something that you have to weigh is, do I want to do this right now? And can I successfully disarm or successfully defend myself and my children away from this person? Or is it just going to be best to give them the keys and hopefully they'll let me take my kids out or take my pets out and they'll just take the car?
Well, I don't have much hope for Lee take my kids out of the car, and they're not going to ask that.
I know.
So, because if they get in your car fast enough and you can't deploy your weapon or whatever you have, all you have left is your hand-to-hand.
That's correct. And there's a lot of people that don't carry weapons, don't believe in the permits. They're kind of scared. They're afraid of guns. They don't want to carry them, and I understand that too. But just the way things are going with not just in Minneapolis, but in America as a whole, there's so much violence. We try to give them options. So if somebody does put a weapon in your face and you can use some of your gross motor techniques to protect yourself, hopefully you'll be able to do that. Nobody else in your vehicle is going to get hurt. And not all the time, but sometimes if we find like in people that have been raped, people that have been attempted to be raped, when they fight back, and I saw this in Maple Grove a couple of times, when they actually fought back, the attackers didn't know what to do. It surprised them because they just kind of felt that person was just going to be a willing victim. When they're knight and you fight back, now all of a sudden it's a different story and they realize that it's not going to go the way they want it and they take off and run.
Wasn't easy pickings.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, I would sure hate to interrupt their evening with a fight back. But tough. I mean, nobody wants that fight back until it's too late, and then by that time it's too late anyway. So I just don't get that.
And one of the programs we teach is the Women's Instruction course. We call it the WIC. And that's one of the things we talk to them a lot about. There's a great book out there called The Gift of Fear, which is a great book for a lot of people to read because it talks about how you can manage your fear and how fear can overtake you. And we give them a lot of tools and moves that they can do. So particularly if it is a woman, in this case, it's a woman's course. If someone comes up and they're trying to take advantage of you and they're trying to do it in a way that's going to hurt you, you're going to feel comfortable that you can fight back. And if you fight back hard enough, and if you make it difficult for that person to accomplish what they want, you're probably going to be able to survive.
And we're assuming that it's the pronoun is an actual woman, not a biological woman.
Well, it's whether you're a cisgender woman, whether you're transgender, it doesn't matter. Okay, we teach on all those. Do you identify yourself as a woman? We'll teach you in that course, and we want you to survive.
Well, that's the goal right there. Stay alive.
Stay alive.
Okay, you had mentioned some places when we were off recording here. Say those names again for your locals.
So you're talking about some of the dojos they can go to?
Yes.
One's called Ronin 13. It's up, I believe it's in Ham Lake. You have Krav Maga Minneapolis, which is in Uptown. You have Valley Self-Defense in Stillwater. You have Krav Maga 101 in Edina. And then there is another friend of mine that teaches integrative defense strategies. And he is Krav Maga. He's not IKMF, but he is part of he does teach Krav Maga itself. All very good instructors.
And we'll be taking some of these pics off their website. As you listen to the show, you'll see these icons come up. Hopefully we'll get enough of them out there so you can just tap on it and jump right into their website. Jeff, what am I not asking? Because, I'm not a Krav Maga guy. And what do I need to know? What am I not asking that you should be very relevant here?
Well, when you come in, to let people know, we have levels. We have P1 to P5, which are the basic levels. Then we have a graduate level. P is practitioner. G is a graduate level, G1 to G5. And then you have expert level, which is E1 to E5. So there's quite a ways that you can climb up if you stay with it. Most people will find the P levels, they can go about 3-4 months, and they can test and go to the next level. Gets a little harder when it gets to the G level. Might take, maybe 4 or 5 months. But again, everyone advances at their own speed.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of advancement for you to get better. And there's a lot of instructor courses that you can go through.
Is there anybody in Maple Grove? Did you say that already?
There is nobody in Maple Grove. I was trying to look at potentially starting a Krav Maga like in the Champlin, Dayton, Maple Grove area, but just right now I've just not been able to find a place to start yet.
Now, financially, what does it take to make this happen?
If you go to the websites, they will talk to you about the price. I know that we've tried to keep price down for people. There's some places out there might cost you $150, $200 a month. I know that some of the Krav Maga places have tried to keep the cost down a little bit to get people in. They're very competitive in their prices. So I've always told people, price around, look at the different prices, figure out how far you'd have to drive and what would be the most economical for you. But there's a lot of good packages out there that you can get, whether it's monthly or yearly.
Mm-hmm. And of course, location is always key. And of course, if you like your instructors or your dojos, that's a win too.
Exactly. And like I said, every one of the instructors like myself, we love to instruct. We like to help people. We're not just going to bring you in just to get you up a belt. We're going to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing when you test. And if you don't pass it, well, then it's kind of our fault because we didn't prepare you enough. And we're just going to try that much harder to prepare you better for the next time.
Incredible stuff. And the more I read on it, the more I was fascinated by it. It was just one of these things where like you couldn't stop reading it.
Well, a lot of police officers that come up to me and say, well, I've never heard of Krav Maga. I said, well, it's not as popular in parts of Minnesota and parts of the United States, very popular in Europe and China, different all over the continents. But I've told people when you look at something applicable for law enforcement to be able to save yourself and be able to control something, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very important for police officers right now. Krav Maga really kind of complements that. And I know some of the places that teach Krav Maga, they also teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu together. So you're getting the stand-up self-defense, but if you get knocked to the ground, now you're getting the ground defense as well.
Mm-hmm. As you know, we are in 51 countries. And all the countries you mentioned were in there, and these people listen to this show. So what do you have to say to those guys out there that are in that world?
Well, every country has their own issues or problems, but I can tell you I've been able to meet contacts in some of these different countries that teach Krav Maga. Very, very passionate people. The training they do is some of the best training you're going to get. The Israeli instructors are some of the best instructors I have ever had. Very compassionate, very determined to make you a better instructor, to help your students. And if you start reaching out to some of those other countries or you stop in, if you're visiting there and try a couple classes, you will not regret it.
That is awesome. So I suppose if you're out in Israeli or wherever they have these and you stop in, and do you have to like set up, or can you just say, hey, I'm from the U.S., I want to jump in and I want to take a couple of yours?
In some classes, they will allow that. You can just stop in and say, I'm interested in it. I've heard about it. This is where I'm from. And most of those instructors would be more than happy. I know in Krav Maga Minneapolis, your first lesson is free. So you can evaluate it and say something I like or something I don't.
It's quite a lifestyle, isn't it?
It's completely a lifestyle. And for me, it's been a part of my life for well over 30 years. And the reason I do that is because I like helping people, but I also want to make sure that I can defend myself, defend my family as well. I never want to be a helpless victim. And that's why I just encourage people to train as much as you can and be able to protect yourself.
Incredible stuff. You see why I wanted you on the show.
The better message I can get, the more positive message I can get to people out there. Because again, a lot of people haven't heard about it. So I just want to get the message out there to tell them there's a lot of great places to train, but this is another one that you should check out as well.
Okay. Let's put this in the fifth gear now. In a war situation, because our country is in a pretty tough spot right now. We have people who are volunteering to go over to Ukraine to pick up a rifle and fight for someone, and I don't know if they do or don't know what they're doing. I mean, the rest of the people sit around and say, hey, great for you, good for you, we'll see you later. What would you say if these guys were in a combat situation like this? Would this be a win for them to actually have it military-wise?
Absolutely, because Krav Maga was originally designed on the battlefields in Israel, battlefields in World War II. Emil Lichtenfeld looked at this and said, there's a way to protect a soldier, because obviously their training needs to be a little different, but there's also a way to protect a civilian, and that's why he adapted it to civilian as well. So one of the courses you can take is a military instructor course. And there's a lot of amazing military personnel around the world. The Israelis don't have to take a backseat to anybody. And when you get trained by these gentlemen and these ladies, men and ladies that teach this, let me tell you something. They're passionate. They know what they're doing, and they will help you survive, whether it's civilian or a battlefield. So if you knew like the military grade part of it, I guarantee you're going to be able to survive on the battlefield.
Wow. Okay, so we've talked about most all of that. You've covered some stuff I didn't know, and that was very useful information. What am I missing? What didn't I ask you?
Well, one thing to let people know is, I'm a de-escalation instructor for where I work at. So I'm all about de-escalation and, treating people with respect and dignity and trying to not get involved in a situation, trying to keep things calm, trying not to get involved in any conflict or crisis situation. And we have a timeline in Krav Maga where we teach people that. Walk away if you can. Avi always said, remember one thing, and that is, so one may be able to walk in peace. That's why you learned Krav Maga, so you can have the confidence to walk in peace. And through that timeline, there's releases, there's late releases. So if you can't run away, you might have to kick, or you might have to use an elbow. Suddenly they grab you in a bear hug. We teach you how to get out of that. Well, suddenly it might be like what we call late release. So suddenly they grab you on the ground, and we teach a way to get out of that. So there are so many different levels to Krav Maga, and to be able to help people get out of whatever predicament they're in. We may start off by saying, I don't want a problem, and just run away. But if you can't, then we teach you how to protect yourself as well.
Okay. For the last time, let's run these guys as local here. Tell us the dojos, and we will put a fork in this, and let's publish this, because what a great show.
So some of those places, again, one of them is called Ronin 13, and again, I believe it's Ham Lake. You have Krav Maga Minneapolis, which is in uptown in Minneapolis. You have Valley Self-Defense in Stillwater. You have Krav Maga 101, which is in Edina. And then a friend of mine also teaches integrated defense strategies, which is Krav Maga, a little bit different than the IKMF, but an amazing instructor, and you will get great instruction from him as well.
Where do you teach at?
I teach basically through Krav Maga Minneapolis, but I have people that come up in from time to time and, hey, will you do a one-on-one with me? Can you come over here? I've done a little bit of that, but primarily the teaching I've done is Krav Maga Minneapolis. I have went to Valley Self-Defense one time, a couple times, and help teach a little bit. Some kind of little bit all over the place, just kind of help out whenever I can. But I enjoy teaching as much as I can. I just try to get good practices out to people so they can feel better about themselves to protect them and them loved ones.
Okay. You comfortable with today's show?
I love it. It's great.
All right. So you've heard the places where these can be attained at. Talk to these guys. Tell them your interest level, and go take a class. You said Minneapolis had the first free one. See if it trips your trigger. If you don't want to go to Minneapolis, like most of us don't, then find the East Bethel guy, wherever is close to you. Let's see, what else? Am I missing anything right now?
I think by and large, just so people understand what different areas that can get taught. Again, we talked about there is the women instruction course, the kid instruction course. You have the civilian instruction course. You have law enforcement instructor course, military instructor course. You have the VIP instructor course. So even if you say, well, I'd like to specialize maybe eventually in one area, you can certainly do that. The levels, you're going to find that because it's a lot of gross motor skills, it's easy to retain it, which a lot of people like. And a lot of the feedback we get are very applicable, enjoyed it, wish I would have done it sooner.
Do you want to publish an email of yourself, or do you just want to go by through the dojos?
Best thing would be go to the dojos, but my email is jgarland47@charter.net. So if people would want to send me any questions or email me on anything, more than happy to answer whatever questions I can.
Okay, say one more time.
You betcha. It's jgarland47@charter.net.
That's the letter J?
Letter J.
Okay, not J-A-Y.
Nope.
Okay, we have it. All right, we're 19 minutes and 42 seconds into this second segment. Unbelievable information here. I don't know if I'm missing anything, but I tell you what a great show. You knocked this one out of the park. Any parting thoughts before we bounce?
Well, I just want to appreciate you having me come on, Tim. This is awesome, getting the word out to people. And as we've talked before, just it's a changing world. And for a lot of people think, well, this only happens in Minneapolis and St. Paul. Pick up a newspaper, pick up a phone, pick up your ring, take a look and see what people are posting on social media. This is everywhere. You know, I think a lot of people would have never thought that Kim Potter would have ever had to get into that kind of a situation in Champlin, but it happened. We've had a couple of friends of mine have gotten involved in shootings in Maple Grove. I mean, it's everywhere. It's all the way from International Falls all the way down to Rochester. So be prepared for it. Be ready for it. Accept it as the new world, the new way of life, and do what you can to protect yourself. And don't be scared to go out and try this because there's no pressure. We will help you the best we can. And when you're done with it, I guarantee you will be much better and much more confident to protect you and your family.
Outstanding job. I appreciate you coming in the studio today. You sound wonderful. Sounds like you've been doing this your whole life behind the mic.
Well, I don't know about that, but I appreciate you having me come on to talk to all your fans that would like to know more about Krav Maga.
All right. Thanks again. And for you people out there, I sent the last show to Ukraine and Russia, and I'm getting a ton of messages and emails. Unfortunately, my translator to English is not working, so I'm trying to catch up as much as I can. Thank you all for listening out there. I appreciate it. I'm sorry you're going through that. Our next two shows are going to be senators. Senator Kozelka, he's going to be on the show, and Senator Dr. Jensen. These guys are lined up. They're in the queue, and the next two shows will be these guys. So stay tuned for Hutcast in the future, and we want to thank you very much. Thank you, Jeff. We will catch you next time, and have a fantastic Sunday on 3/6 of 2022. And that's a wrap for Hutcast. Hutcast is, again, a pragmatic approach to seeing things how some people see them. If you like our show, give us a thumbs up on the Facebook site. Again, for Hutcast, thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.